Yeah. This one today is about the whole spiritual landscape and our time and circumstance of where we're at. Yeah, and the first one I'll get some things cleared. About some of the videos and some of the audios have been bad because I've been using webcams and I'm only getting a mono sound out of it. And rather than stereo, and some of the ones where basically my eyes always look like they're a bit skewy to one side. Hopefully I've seen to get this right on these ones now, later ones as I've come over the years of doing this on these mobiles, just home throw up vlogs. But so going back to what I was going to say, this one's basically about the spiritual landscape of what we're living in and where's what and how things are, because I'm just fed up with hearing so much sort of stuff on YouTube and just in life where I think people just seem like lost little space cadets and don't know where's what. Like, you can tell this by what people talk about. So yeah, this one's basically the landscape, the spiritual landscape. Firstly, right, you've got the spiritual universe where we all originally come from, basically, which is called Yoma, Power of Yoma Vaikuntha, which is basically a spiritual skies and planet, which is 3/4 the size of the 1/4 material nature we're in at the moment. Between basically the line between the spiritual universe and the material nature we're in is 1/4 in size, is the causal ocean. And this is where basically the difference is in the spiritual universe. Our souls, our jiva, is basically dissolved into our self. Our spiritual body looks no older than 21 and 25. When you go through the causal ocean, what happens is our soul, our jiva, covers over our spiritual atman self. See, then you hence get a body, a soul mode, and here we are in the quarter size of the bleeding material nature, of the bleeding incarceration. Right? Now, how we got here? Well, first of all, in the spiritual universe, from what I'm picking up in all of them in this life, and what it is a spiritual warfare, and what's happening in the spiritual universe is that people wanted to marry in the spiritual universe and monogamize. And you see, when you're in all of the spiritual universe, there is no monogamy or marriage. Only the father and all his wives and consorts as he is married, where the rest of us, as sons and daughters of the Pradyumna and Pradyumni, the male and female Cupid, all sons and daughters, live forever in open relationships or polyamorousness, which is the Immaculate Conception. Now, a sect of people, or spirit soul humans at the time in the spiritual universe, didn't want to do this, and so they wanted to marry and copy the father, Kalki. And that weren't going to happen. And so it's probably all contained into spiritual prisons in the spiritual until basically put into the causal ocean to then basically put into the material nature. Now there's a whole lot of transition of how and when and what to, which is a study, which is still something I'm looking into, because I like to know that finite detail of how that's happening. But then we've been thrown into the material nature. And we're only 10% of the whole of human population. You've got to understand 90% of the whole of the spiritual population is still in the spiritual universe of Vaikuntha Loka. We ourselves, right, are 10% in the material nature, and we're only in one Brahmanda. There's loads of Brahmandas in the material nature, makes up for 1/4 of the size of the whole spiritual universe, you see. And the Brahmanda we're in is as small as the Brahmandas, and it only has 4 heads. Like Brahma only has 4 heads, while other ones can have 5, 6, or 100,000, 10,000 in the material nature. It still only equates to only 10% of the whole of the human population. So it's trying to get a scope of how big and how many people are to contain so many humans, when we're 8 billion humans here, let alone all the animals in this material nature we're in, and all the trees and everything else that's living. That one time may have been a human itself, and going through its own transmigrational sort of a process of living. It gets a scope of how big 10% means in a containment, right? Yeah. Anyway, so what has happened? We've been chucked in this material nature, and so it's the first death, right? But we're cushioned in this Krita Yuga, which is the golden Yuga, which is the perfect penitentiary of humans to live in, which is paradise on earth. Closest equivalently on the material level that we have to the spiritual home of our Vaikuntha on earth. But then the problem is the second death began because, you see, in the spiritual universe, in the material nature of the Krita Yuga, everything was here. All the first trades, everything we know was here. There was no money. there was no monogamy. There's probably not even eating meat. It wasn't eating meat, you see. You see, the fall was, you see, I think what happens is, you see, all these things got introduced. Meat eating, monogamy started to creep back in. People wanted to be monogamy. Money was put in, you see. And this is the fall, which is basically the Treta Yuga. I think also extending more how this fell, I think, you see, in our first classness of the Treta Yuga, I think we used to pretend we were married and pretend to have money and get into sexy, kinky role plays. And I think the wicked amongst us decided it'd be really clever to manipulate everybody who making money real. So when you make money real, prostitution becomes real, you see. These are deep, dark truths I think is happening and should be said and are going to be said. As I said, I'm fed up with hearing people not saying things, so I'm saying it. If no one is going to say it, I've not even thought about it, you tell me where you stand on that in conversation. I'm saying it. And this is what I truly think what the second death of mankind is basically the wicked decided to basically really become married, to really have adulterous affairs, to really have money, so there really is prostitution, where these things in the first Krita Yuga are pretend money, pretend to be married, pretend to have an affair in kinky role plays, where what I think this is what's gone down, and this is where the Treta Yuga, the wicked amongst us, started to make this happen. And this is the treacherous Treta Yuga, the first of the three fallen Yugas, Treta Yuga, Dwapara, Bronze Yuga, and then Kali Yuga, the Iron Yuga, which we're in now. Now these three Yugas, they had the first two Yugas, I say the Treta Yuga and Dwapara Yuga, probably still had inklings in the countries and counties of golden Yugas where there's untouched still. But in this Kali Yuga we're in now, there's nothing but basically monetary systems and marriage being the major theme of how people are meant to relate and being what's being called decent living, where actually the highest living is actually immaculate open relationship because you're checking adultery, where I'm myself living myself personally. Because the whole point of life to me is actually returning back to the spiritual universe. So it's the foremost of life is eat, mate, sleep and defend. And what's happening here, most people aren't getting the mating right and the diet right. So because you're eating meat and you're monogamizing and adulterizing, even your faith in the monogamy is keeping you reincarnated. So you keep reoccurring the life after life, the same mistakes, and then reincarnating. So people talk kind of like, you only live once, but how many times have you said that in millions of lifetimes you think you only live in once, so fuck it, I'm just going to have a good time. Do you know what I mean? And have it off of that bloke or that bird behind their husband's back. We only live in once, and you've done that so many times, you collect a wage of sin. You're eating the meat, who cares, you know what I mean? It's there to be eaten and all this sort of thing. And the truth of it is, in the whole big afterlife pantheon of afterlife management, it goes against you, and then basically you keep reincarnating. I would argue that meat and fish and that can be just as healthy as vegetarian and vegan food, granted, but it's not healthy for your eternal spirit self, spiritual soul self, you see, the Atman Jiva yourself. It's healthy for you. And so you keep reincarnating because of, and like where we're at the moment, sort of like in time, is like we're in a Vavasvata Manu. There's 14 paths of Manu for one day. One day makes up for 4 cycles of yugas, and we're in the 7th part of it, called the Vavasvata Manu. And we only just started. We're known as No in the Bible is basically Vavasvata Manu. And there's 14 parts. We only just started really, and each Manu lasts for about over 301 million years each. So there's about 550-ish sort of 4 cycle yugas have gone. But I think what's happened, we're in the 51st year. That's to say, this 51st year of 100 years of Brahma's creation in material nature is equivalent to about 311 trillion years and 40 billion years. All in all, 311 trillion, 40 billion years. Now we're halfway through that, just over 51st year, so 155 trillion years or so has gone past. I think what happens in this time was something changes in humanity when basically the world has to start to stay in a Krita Yuga, and it should have done anyway, in my argument, but it stays a Krita Yuga permanently. I think after this Kali Yuga, there's not going to be no more 4 cycle systems. It's just going to be a Krita Yuga, but it's actually the hardest point at the moment is getting back to the Krita Yuga. They said this is the darkest Yuga that there's ever been. Jesus said this himself as an indication, nor will ever be an age as dark as this again. So the good news indicator probably that what's going to happen is there's going to be a closing down. Once there's a yuga's closed, it'll stay a Krita Yuga forevermore, and it's closing down of the universe, and it'll be checked every time some smart aleck, wicked so-and-so decides to try and make money back into the world, and because of money then you get prostitution, and then you get gambling that we're in now, and you get theft, and you get slaughter in these industries, you see, which are the 5 iron seats of Kali, you see, along with false intoxication, which is big pharma. So you know, all these things get sort of eradicated and reviewed when put into the Krita Yuga administration, which we need to be put into. This is the movement. I think it's our time and our time to do. How's it going to go about? I don't know when, how. It's just basically, as I said, they'll go on with other vlogs. I'm not going too much to that. It's basically not voting in firstly is step one. Don't vote. To actually get there, to stop a constitution of a Kali Yuga, you're going to have to basically get into Krita Yuga administration. To get to Krita Yuga administration, you've got to do step one, which is not to vote on voting day, you know. But going back onto what I was saying about the 3/4 size of they come from 1/4 material nature. Again, it's interesting how the 4 yugas that we find ourselves in is in 4 parts. No, not 4 equal parts, but 4 parts anyway. But 1/4, which is the longest, 1/4 of it is Krita Yuga. That's the longest yuga, and the other 3 yugas they're smaller. But what I was saying, these 4 yugas I truly believe are actually going to be eradicated, and all it's going to be is the Krita Yuga for an angelic production on Earth. I can truly see that actually going to happen sometime soon, you know, whether that's in now or the next 50 years, but it will happen because more people, by natural conscious evolution, are stopping voting. So what happens in 24-hour general elections systems when people stop voting? Eventually, you see, you know, and they outsmart the constitution of party politics by not voting as registered voters, which is the first subtle stance as a movement of registered sovereign people not voting. You see, we are going to get to this focus drive, you know, and then what happened next? We want to be neutral and be non-monetary, you know, clear all the debts, consolidate and condense all housing and hospitalisation in the first state, then use this work smart timeshare template, which is Indra's Vajra, which hasn't been used since the Krita Yuga properly. You see, you go in human resources with that, which is the brightest spark of conduction of service. All it is 39, 13, 444, 73. 30 weeks between 4 people, 7 weeks and 3 days between 7 people. Would then give everybody back 39 weeks, 39 months, or 39 weeks. 9 months or 44 weeks, 10 months roughly, back to ourselves. This would eventually change things to bring into Krita Yuga. But as I say, it's a long haul and it's a long game because it's every 4 or 5 years you get a general election, which is our situation. So yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to clear up, you know, in my quick summarising of everything, you know. And I'll leave it there for right now, but yeah, think about it, and this could be our this is our only way, not could be, it's going to be our only way. When you look at things statistically and facts and stats to our time and circumstances, all we got really to play with, and is knowing how to play with it, and basically, you know, is actually doing nothing on voting day will actually bring it into a free world, you see. But yeah, that's it. Anyway, take care. See you later now. Bye.